Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 13 of the Backyard Banter Podcast. My name is Matt Harmon. If you've been listening to the show, you know that what we're talking about here is not necessarily football takes or fantasy football advice or anything like that. We're actually talking to some of the best people in the industry and getting to know their story about how they got to where they are in order to help other people along that path. But before I introduce today's guest, I want to tell you that this podcast is sponsored by RealitySportsOnline.com, a powerful fantasy platform that lets you manage your fantasy team like a real-life NFL general manager. Use the promo code BYB10 for 10% off the platform fee. That is BYB followed by the numbers 1 and 0. So today we've got a really good guest on, another one of my NFL fantasy colleagues there at NFL.com, and that's Adam Rank. So, Rank, you're the 13th guest I have. I know that's an unlucky number, but I feel like you have the charm to turn that around.
I feel like it is a very lucky number. I've always been fascinated with the number 13. There was a former LA Ram, Kenny Washington, the first player to break the across the NFL's color barrier in the era, and he wore number 13. So I'm very honored, and it's apropos because the Los Angeles Rams are back. The only thing that needs to come back is Matt Harmon needs to come back to NFL.com fantasy because it's not the same without you. I love that you're doing this, and I love that this is sponsored. I don't think NFL Fantasy Live podcast is sponsored. The Backyard Banter sponsored. I think that should be telling. I hope people are understanding. This is Madison Avenue has spoken, and they're saying, listen, we want to back this young man, Matt Harmon. The NFL Fantasy, yeah, whatever. Those guys are nice, whatever. But the Backyard Banter deserves a sponsorship, and it has one. And I'm honored and privileged to be on.
Well, that's very kind of you. And yeah, I mean, I think that is pretty telling. I think that says pretty much all you need to know about the state of things right now. And Rank, actually, it's funny that we're on a podcast together. I'm going to tell this story to the audience before we get started on your story. The first time Rank and I met, we actually had a pretty contentious interaction, if you remember. I didn't know that we'd.
I remember.
So I talked on the last episode actually about how I don't really care about sports. I love football obviously, but I don't really care. I don't care at all about other sports. So the first time that Rank and I met each other, he was actually saying something about baseball, which is like, ugh, I could care less. And he mentioned the name Mike Trout, and I was like, who's Mike Trout? And I think at first Rank thought that I was just being like an ironic, young jackass that was just being like a hipster to pretend I didn't know. But then when I was like, no, I really don't know, you just kind of walked away. And it was a week after that that was pretty much the basis of our interaction, was these negative feelings about the fact that I did not know who Mike Trout is. I know who he is now, but so it's funny that we ended up developing a really good relationship. I feel like, especially after I took over doing your rankings for a while there, and you became one of my favorite people at the NFL media office. And I don't say that just because I'm talking to you right now.
Well, that's very nice of you to say. I believe too this statement about Mike Trout. You were rocking the invisible tie, so that's really hard to really comprehend. Like, is this guy just having a go because like a lot of people might know that I'm a huge Angels fan and that, so I could see. So it's cool though. This is the one thing that I like, and I like interacting with young people. That's what I say now. I like interacting with the kids and finding out like, the things that I necessarily hold dear to my life, like not everybody believes that way. So it was something. It was not off-putting, but it was a little bit shocking because at the same time I'm like, you weren't living in Southern California for a very long time at that moment, and he still is one of the biggest names in baseball. I think it's more of a damnation on how people feel about baseball now, that it's more of the niche sport and it's not necessarily the national pastime or something that I grew up. I grew up in Southern California, so you're basically forced to play baseball at an early age, and I'm left-handed too, so there was no way I was ever quitting baseball. My dad would not have allowed it. So it's a big thing. But I think like that was good though, because we had that rocky moment right off the top, and then it allowed us kind of like I don't know. I kind of admired you for it, and I'll tell you this now. Now that you're not here and I don't see you day to day, I will actually say something nice about you in your presence. But no, it was really like I really did. But I appreciate that kind of things. I like young guys who stick to their guns. And there was a time, and we can get into this a little bit later, but I was the young guy walking into the office not that you didn't necessarily care about what I thought, but like sticking, like people are like, you see the interns here all the time. They're like, they're too afraid to say what they feel, but you came out, you had an opinion, you stuck to it, and I admired that. So when you took over my rankings, I said, listen, this is the guy. I would rather just follow your rankings than my rankings anyways. You probably know more than I do. So that's what I want to do. That's what I do in life, is I write a lot of coattails. So I said, you know what, I'm going to hitch myself to this wagon and just go along for the ride.
Well, it's been a damn good ride on my end, I think. So, no, it is very funny that, yeah, I mean, well, and that's who I am. I never, it's not that I don't care what people think, but, just always be yourself is an important thing, no matter what somebody else might think about that. But let's
wait, hold on. No. My favorite Matt Harmon story, even about the trout thing, because that was fun. There was a good time. The best was, and for people who don't know, we have this great manager. Her name's Duke. She was the head of fantasy. And she's really a great manager, and she really promoted teamwork and wanting everybody to work together and be collaborative. So every week on Wednesday afternoons, we'd have these meetings, and periodically, or not every week, she would choose 3 to 4 people to give their life story, so to speak. Better know a teammate is a thing that it was called. And so Matt gets up there, and he's showing Charlie, because everybody would go for the dog pictures, because it's a lot of young people. So they don't necessarily have the child pic. Like I whip out the child pics. I'm like, hey, here's my daughter. She's cute. And so for Matt, he's showing the dog. And then he's talking about how he's a TV snob and just being like, if you like New Girl, I won't look at that crap. And I don't know if I can work blue here, but if it wasn't New Girl, it was not Third Rock. It was the geek show.
It was Big Bang Theory.
Bang Theory. That's the one.
Because I actually just recently watched the entirety of New Girl in like a 2-week period, so I've officially relinquished the TV snobs title. But anyways, continue.
That's a good show, though. It
is a really good show. Yeah, and a girl showed it to me, so I was like, oh well, of course it's good.
Yeah, of course. I love this show. I love Zooey Deschanel. Actually, do you like Zoe's sister is on the show Bones?
Oh, really? Because I don't like.
I think her name's. That show's terrible, but you're like, oh, Emily Deschanel or whatever her first name is. I'm like, oh, that's really weird because her sister plays this like scientist or whatever, and Zoe's just kind of goofy and whatever and cute and one of my favorite actresses. So I like that show. So I think that's a good show. I feel like I'm a TV snob a little bit. I don't know. But a little bit, right? Where were you, though? Were you involved in this Friends discussion that we had on Twitter recently?
Yeah, I was in the middle of that. And I like to, not my football takes and like my work or anything. I don't like be, over the top to be over the top and like to get attention. But if there's a discussion about a thing like Friends on Twitter, I'll be intentionally more aggressive about like the fact that I think it sucks just to annoy people. And yeah, so I don't care for Friends. I don't find it entertaining, and I don't care about the structure of the show because I just don't think it's very good.
Right. And I understand that. And I understand. I couldn't remember. It's kind of hard. It was hard to keep track because I know Dan Hansis of Around the NFL is a huge Friends fan. And I couldn't tell where Marcus and Alex Gelhar were coming in on that too.
Oh, Alex is a staunch defender of Friends.
Yeah. Okay. That's right. Yeah. It's weird because he's kind of a young kid like you. So that the fact that he liked it, and it was weird to me because I was actually, when Friends came out, I would have been in high school or whatever, or just starting college. And I always worked Thursday nights because if you worked in bars and stuff like that, Thursday night was always a night that you had to work. So I missed that. And I think Seinfeld was at its tail end too or whatever. So I kind of missed that stuff. So I watched Friends in syndication, and it always bothered me because then it was the first way to like really binge watch something because now everybody is able to binge watch it by recording it and all that stuff. But back when things started getting into syndication is when you could really binge watch something. So I remember binge watching it and watching the character digression because in season 1, there's an episode where Chandler and Joey are taking Ross to a Rangers game. And they're kicking around an apple or a can, and they're like naming all the Knicks, like, oh, Leach to Messier to blah, blah, blah. Mike Richter saves, and it's like, oh, so Chandler knows sports. And then in the last episodes, he's this effeminate person who's never seen a sporting contest in his life. And I'm like, what that was the thing? But
yeah.
And it sucks because Bill Lawrence, who is the creator of Scrubs, which might be my favorite television sitcom of all time.
I like Scrubs.
He was on the first season of Friends. Yeah, he was on the first. He wrote the first season of Friends, and he felt like he really connected with the Chandler character. So that might have been why Chandler was really good in season 1, and then kind of digressed.
That's really interesting. And this is great, too, because I know the guys get on you on the Fantasy Live podcast for filibustering and taking these long rants. But on this podcast, we get to do that here.
Is it welcome? Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Nice.
The first 5 minutes here, we basically talked about nothing that's really been on the...
It's been important.
I wasn't going to say not important. I was going to say not on the quote-unquote agenda, which, by the way, I never carry an agenda on these podcasts.
No.
I know what I'm going to say. But, no, it's TV is funny, and I eventually did in that same Friends discussion when Dan Hansis was basically tweeted back at us like, not liking Friends is a cheap way to get hipster TV cred. And that's when I said the thing about New Girl. I was like, yeah, like a month ago I watched the entire series, the entire seasons, all 5 of them that are on Netflix in 2 weeks. So I think I've relinquished any hipster TV cred. But no, those better know teammate things. Those better know teammate meetings were they're interesting because I always found that what I was always pointing out to people is that the older guys, I remember Dylan Milner, the executive producer of NFL Fantasy Live, and some of the other older guys that were there their presentations would be so much longer than all of ours. like mine was 5 minutes, and I was like, yeah, this is me. All right, let's keep it moving. So it
really is a glory days type of thing with people really storyboarding everything like that. And what's funny is I actually haven't done mine yet, and I need to do it. And I'm going to go out there and in that frame, because I know you and I know Zach Posner, who is a writer for me on The Weekender and on Madden NFL Live. Not that we needed writers on Madden NFL Live, but just want to go out and get some cheap plugs in. He also noticed that too. The older guys are always the ones who are like, I'm going to go back to my backstory. And I get it. And I don't. I mean, for me, I feel like you would want to see pictures of my kid. You would want to see pictures of me with hair. And that's about it. I think that's basically what everybody wants to get down to. And speaking of which, and to tie this all into our Friends discussion, when I was a younger male, and you could probably picture it now if you did put hair on my head, I actually looked a lot like Matthew Perry, Chandler.
Oh, really? And
one time I was in Las Vegas, and I was in this casino called the Westward Ho. It's torn down now. It was across the street from the Riviera. And this Australian guy stops me. He goes, hey, mate. He goes, you look like that guy. And I'm like, okay, who? He goes, like the guy from Friends. What's his name? And I go, Chandler. No, I said Matthew Perry. He goes, no, that's not his name. And I'm like, if this guy says I look like Schwimmer, we're going to throw. Because that is definitely not cool. Because now the funny guy, the guy who makes the jokes like, could I be one? I'm like, oh, yeah. I go, Chandler. He's like, that's him. I'm like, oh, okay. He goes, and then he stops me. He goes, but you look like him when he was doing the drugs and his face got all puffy yeah. And so that's terrible. And I go, could I look more like the fat Chandler? I don't think so. And so he laughed and I walked away. And so I'm walking away and the guy's trying to get my attention again. And I don't really want any part of him. And he's like, hey, mate, hey, fat Chandler, get over here. So he comes over, we play craps. He's calling me fat Chandler. And I'm like, I want to lose $40 and get out of there. But unfortunately, I go on the roll of a lifetime and people are gathering and there's it really turned into a Friends episode because a tour of Asian tourists show up at the table and now the table's packed and I'm fat Chandler to everybody and rolling dice and doing whatever. And then thankfully it was 2 p.m. on Friday afternoon. So for the whole weekend, I'm walking through the Westward Ho and people would stop me. Oh, fat Chandler. Oh, he's a good role. I'm like, everybody's shaking my hand. It was pretty fun. So it now comes full circle. So that's when I do better know a teammate. I will do that. Probably share that terrible story. And but I'll try not to make it long. I'll understand. I'm going to have a little watch with me. Try to get it. I think about 30 seconds. I'll try to get in and out and try to let people go on with their day.
Less than 2 minutes. Some of those guys literally took. I was paying attention. They would literally take 10 minutes, and it was like, oh god, this is painful. And this is you guys.
They really. They really needed like one of those lights that they have at the comedy clubs, like at the Improv, where the guy with the flashlight, like just sitting there timing people, like, yeah, 2 minutes, like here's the click, get off the stage.
Yeah,
They
Carmen's
really
too
needed it.
nice, but she needed somebody there to. I would have volunteered. She needed somebody to do the wrap up music, like when one of those jokers.
Playing them off. Yeah.
You guys, the listeners of the podcast, are getting the full Adam Rank experience right now. That we've jumped from like several topics and none of them have been on point. But let's get into your story here a little bit, Rank. So I always ask the guests at the start of the podcast, and now we're no longer at the start of the podcast, but nevertheless, how did you first fall in love with football or fantasy football, whichever one you want to tackle? That tell us that backstory a little bit.
Well, I'd always been a football fan. My dad was kind of a sports guy, but wasn't like a huge. He liked sports. I'll put it that way. But even outside of baseball and like, I think they wanted me to participate because I think they just wanted me out of the house. So, but I love football. I really enjoyed it. I grew up 22 minutes from Angel Stadium, home of the Rams and the Angels, and so really got into it that way. And was just kind of one of those nerdy kids that, in addition to liking comic books and things like that, I also collected football cards and played a lot of video games. And that was the cool thing about, having Tecmo Bowl growing up and then eventually Madden and everything, is you would learn every player's name and just know everybody, and you could recite names and everything like that. And I think like I could go back, and if you look at the original Tecmo Bowl, like I know all the team, like, oh yeah, like I know who Michael Downs is for the Dallas Cowboys for no other reason than one of our buddies loved playing with the Dallas Cowboys, and Michael Downs was always making plays. And it's like, he could sit next to me at one point and I wouldn't know who he was, but if he said his name, I'd be like, oh yeah, number 26 for the Cowboys. You stopped Eric Dickerson one time and I didn't appreciate it.
Well, there you go. So what was your first experience like playing fantasy football, and how did that start?
We were doing that in college. Like, again, like I like sports and kind of gravitated to people who are into it. And we started it with baseball, and we would play fantasy baseball, and we would do it kind of like fantasy football, where you would draft your lineup, and we wouldn't do it rotisserie style. Like a lot of people who play fantasy baseball do the 5x5 or the traditional rotisserie. We were actually doing head to head based on the weekend games, because we figured every team played Friday. There was nobody off on a Thursday or anything like that. So you didn't have to worry about that. And we would do it head to head. And it got pretty contentious. And then we started doing fantasy football as well. And I remember the first fantasy league I actually did was with some college buddies. And it was an auction draft. And I remember these guys, Thurman Thomas, Marshall Falk was like just coming into his own as a member of the Colts. This is just before he got traded. And so the bidding just went crazy, and I was just sitting there waiting it out, did not know what I was doing. And then all of a sudden, I just knew Marshall Falk was good because I remembered him at San Diego State. And I'm like, boom, and I bid on him and did all that stuff. And then from then on, I was hooked because it just kind of combined everything that I really enjoyed about sports was statistics. And I guess I want to say gambling, but we did kind of wager beers on it here and there. So it was a lot of fun, and it was a cool way to get involved. And at this point, we were starting to lose our team, and it was pretty evident at some point that the Rams were going to move. So actually, yeah, like they were going to move, and then they moved. And so this was a way to keep interested in football, because it was so easy to be like, you know what, like I don't really need to follow this sport. The Lakers are good, or they were good. The Kings were good at that time. The Lakers weren't as good, but the LA Kings were good. And so there was other things I could have done, but fantasy football like kind of kept my mind into it.
Yeah, I want you to share a little bit about your relationship with the Rams. Go into that for us, just 'cause I think that paints a very important picture of Adam Rank as a person in relation to football.
Yeah, it really it's weird having a team that just goes away. And I know one of the things that really always bothered me was that people contended that the LA Rams weren't supported. And even when they moved to Anaheim, they weren't supported. Now, I don't really remember them as a team playing in the Coliseum. My experience with them was at Anaheim Stadium. I always figured that they played there. And I really just enjoyed going to the games. And as a kid, we would go to the one of our neighbors had had season tickets for the Rams, and every year we would get like one of the preseason games we'd get to go to. And it was really cool. And it wasn't like you didn't know the difference. Like I know a lot of people bitch about the preseason now and these games are meaningless, but when you're a little kid, it doesn't really matter because you're getting there early. You want to run down and try to get Eric Dickerson's autograph, but he was kind of a jerk and didn't want to sign. So whatever. I got his autograph now. Joke's on you, Eric. Now you're groveling back. Oh yeah, when you're out of the limelight, he's giving away his autograph. You go to the Beverly Center and he's just giving away his autograph. But at the time, he was a big deal, and I remember that. Like Marcus Dupree was this dude who played at Oklahoma, who went to the USFL. He had like this crazy story. I think 30 on him, and I remember him coming to the Rams. It was kind of a big deal locally, and just being a part of that, and it was really cool. And then that last season in 1994. Just knowing, because in 1993, they were rumored to be moving to Baltimore, and then that didn't work out. And so we're like, okay, so it seemed like we were safe. Then in 94, you kind of got the impression that like, okay, they might stick around, they might not, but it was appearing that they weren't going to do it. And the last game I went to was in October of 1994, was the Rams versus the Falcons. Tommy Maddox, a lot of people might know him as an NFL bust, but Tommy Maddox, who would eventually go on to lead the Los Angeles Extreme to the only professional football championship that matters, because I don't recognize the Raiders championship. He would go on, but he played in that game. It was 8-5. And I'm like, you know what? If this is NFL football, like just move. Like I'm done with it. Like whatever. And so that was it. And so a lot of people, I know some people who kind of still stayed with the Rams, which didn't make a lot of sense to me. I'm like, look, they're leaving us. It's like when your girl breaks up with you, you're still not a fan of her. You don't like her. You're not friends with her anymore. She's gone. Let her go. So super bitter. Let them go. And I didn't support a team. I had Chargers. I tried Chargers. The thing that sucked was that it seemed like natural you would just kind of be a Chargers fan. Like, they're local. Like, where I grew up wasn't too far away from San Diego. It's actually, it's not really close, but it's like halfway between San Diego and LA. And it's actually easier to get to San Diego from where I lived. So So it would have made sense to just be like a full-on Charger fan. But in 1995, the Chargers went to the Super Bowl. And you're like, well, I don't want to look like a bandwagon fan who's just showing up.
That's a tough spot.
You know what I'm saying? You're like, I don't want to be that guy. So yeah, so you really couldn't go all in on that. So I just kind of floated around. And that was one of the cool things about fantasy is that it allowed you to still have a connection to the NFL. What's up, Charlie? It allowed you to have a connection to the NFL. Like, he's with me. Like, that's the one thing, like, he's backing me up because I've always been against, like, I almost kind of have a legitimate beef with people who are still fans of the team in St. Louis and are now welcoming them back. Like, you're not welcome back. You turned your back on us. Like, the people who shunned that team should be the ones here welcoming them back. Like, I'm of the mind too. Like, I know there was a story like the Super Bowl trophies on a Ryder truck coming on out to Los Angeles. I'm like, you know what? Keep that thing in St. Louis. I don't need it. I don't need to see it. Let the Cardinals keep it or go to the Blues. Actually, that's the best thing. The Blues haven't won anything. Let them put the banner up in their stadium. Let them put the Super Bowl trophy, because that's something the city of St. Louis won. That was something they were a part of. I really think they should be able to hold on to that as a memento. Whether they would want it or not is a different thing, but they should be able to hold on to it. So now they're back, and I guess this filibuster again is going on and on and on, and I don't have a point, as I often don't. And I'm on the fence because a lot of people are like, well, you going back? Are you just going to be a Rams fan? I'm like, well, it's not that easy, you know, because
I know last we spoke about it, you had a list of demands, which I remember when we tried to get them to follow the account to follow you on Twitter. Did that ever actually happen? Did they ever follow you?
The LA Rams are following me on Twitter.
They do? Okay, well, at least that's one demand.
That's good. That's one thing. Like, we're working towards this. You can't.
It's like in that relationship, you meet up for coffee one time. You know, you feel each other out again. So that's kind of the follow on Twitter.
Because exactly. Because a lot's changed in 21 years. I mean, I look at the Rams' return to Los Angeles much in the same way as I look at the Guns N' Roses reunion. Like, I cared about this stuff a lot 21 years ago. Now, I'm like, I'm in a different point of my life. I don't know if I want to spend $300 on a ticket at the T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas and all the money that's going to take. And similarly, I don't know if I want to spend that money to go back and buy season tickets for the Rams because I don't want to be in that position that the first time they go out of town for a road trip wondering if they're going to come back or not because you don't know. You don't know.
No, but it's true. And I love
they go to Dallas and they don't come back. You don't know.
I love your story about this because it really puts the anguish and pain of fanhood, and that's something that like I don't have. In case you can't tell, if you've been listening to the podcast, there's like I care a lot about the things I care about, and the things I don't care about, I literally don't give a shit about at all. So that's like, and that's very much like why I'm a bad, like, you know, I'm a Panthers supporter, I guess. It's my family's from Carolina, like that's
cool.
my quote unquote team, but I don't care if they win or lose. And like I remember talking about a filibuster. I went on a long rant on one of the Fantasy Live podcasts about like the Titans hiring Mike Mularkey and how it just made me so upset because the people that are going to support that team, like they have to just like, all right, I'll just accept it. I'm like, no, man, if your team's bad to you, just dump your team. Like it's so the relationship of it is very fascinating to me. So I appreciate your perspective on that story and how it very much is like being in a relationship with somebody.
It really is. And you know, that last final game that I went to in 94, the stadium was empty. I remember being chased around Anaheim because, yeah, that's right. Because when the Rams were there, it was Anaheim Stadium. It's Angel Stadium now. I remember being chased around by this security guard who just had a hard-on for checking out. Like, he's checking our tickets. I'm like, there's nobody around. And he's like, well, I don't know. You're not supposed to be. I'm like, who cares? Like, it doesn't matter. Like, there's 13 people in this stadium. Like, does it matter if I sit here, if I sit 2 seats? So the whole time this guy he would come over and talk to other ushers. And I'm like, you know what? I looked at him. I'm like, I'm glad you're not going to have a job when this team moves. Because you've ruined it. You've ruined my experience. I know it's a terrible thing to say. And that's another, I do want to say that too. That's the one thing though I do, and as somebody who grew up supporting the LA local, well, some of the LA local things. I'm an Angels fan. I'm a LA Kings fan. I'm a Lakers fan. Is that people always make that comment like, well, you guys don't support a team if it's not good. I'm like, yeah, that's the way it should be. Like, Remember when Chipotle was selling you shitty beef? Yeah, people stopped going there. It wasn't like, did you still keep going? You're like, I'm a fan. I'm going to still go. I'm getting food poisoning. I might die, but I'm a fan. Like, that's the way business works. If somebody's not putting out a product, not something you can – and that goes back to your point that I agreed with you about with the Titans. Like, if you're going out there and going through a process, and I think a team like the Jaguars are going through a process, they've got a young coach. They're like, okay, let's see where this goes. At least if you're going to a football game in Duval County, Florida, with a lot of my good friends down there, you know what? You have something to believe in. Like, okay, this organization's trying to do something. The Titans, they just seem like the dude who's cashing a paycheck. They're like, whatever, like, we have to have a coach? Like, I guess. Malarkey, have you coached before? Yeah, okay, go. Give it a shot. Go. Yeah, well, like, you've seen this guy coach. He's not good.
The fans, to other NFL coaches. Like, even when I was tweeting about it, they were replying like, yeah, well, you know, they might have a new owner, so they kind of just want him to be a placeholder. I'm like, so you're accepting the fact that they're just basically telling you they're literally spinning their wheels, and you're going to keep going there. Like to your point, that would be like if I had a plumber and he keeps coming in and fucking up my toilet every time. I'm not going to keep going to that plumber. You know, it's a subject that I could rant on and on about, just the insanity of being a fan and some of the psychological things that you have to accept there. But Rank, let's talk a little bit more about your story here. And so obviously you're into fantasy football, you're into football. Obviously you've got a lot of passion and feelings about things. How did you decide to channel that into becoming a writer, or where did you first get your start in the business?
It's one of those things. Nobody in my family. My dad is a Navy veteran. He grew up on a farm in rural Illinois, and nobody in my family had ever gone to college. And I just kind of was like, I think I was the last hope because I was the youngest. So I was the last hope for my parents, I guess. So I kind of was going to college, and I didn't know what I was doing. And I was just kind of like, whatever, you sign up for college. I had good grades in high school, so it's like, okay, and I'm going to Cal State Fullerton because it's local, and I'm like, all right, this is cool, and I was going to try to give baseball a go, and that was hilarious. I don't know if you guys – like, as I'm about 6 feet-ish, I weighed like 180, left-handed. The guy who I would have competed against in college is a guy named Mark Kotze, who had like an 85-year MLB career, and just going out, just being on a field with those guys and watching. Like when you're in high school, you think like I'm hot shit, like I'm pretty good. Go to that now. Oh, not good. Nope. Like I could hit the ball far, I could run fast, I could do all that stuff, but I didn't put the bat on the ball enough. And so then you watch somebody like that in the batting cage, you're like, this never misses. And like everything's solid contact. You're like, oh, please just cut me now so I can go and just start my life anew. Like, I don't want to quit, but just make it happen. And like, okay. And like at Cal State Fullerton, they had this thing like all the people who tried out. So like if you got recruited, that's one thing. They'll give you the benefit of the doubt and they'll stick with you. I wasn't recruited to play at Cal State Fullerton. So you had to go through so anybody who wasn't recruited had to go through an audition process. And afterwards they would put all the names and they would break you in categories like above, below average, and then why are you even here or something like that. It was terrible. There was one guy who was like, it was like D1 caliber. Some dude, his name, a friend of mine, Scott Julius. But there were guys like, you would be like, okay, like you're good. Like you could probably find another D1 school you might be able to play with. It's not going to be here. I was in the like, yeah, start studying. Like, I hope you're good at something else category. So I had to like start getting serious about stuff. And like, I was a business major for no other reason. Cause it's like, yeah, all right, whatever, like that just seemed like the thing you would do. Like people would be like, hey, like, what do you want to do with, like, I always love sports and everything, but people are like, what do you want to do with your life? I'm like, I don't know. Like, I want to wear like a white collared shirt with a tie to work and sit in a cubicle and make like $100,000 and then bitch about my boss and then whatever. Like, that's what people do with their life, right? I don't know. I really don't know. And so one of my friend's moms was talking to me one day because I was complaining about college. This is hard. Like, I don't think I dig this very much. And she's like, well, she's like, what were you good at in high school? I'm like, I was good at writing. She's like, why don't you study in that? And I'm like, Scooby-Doo, Shaggy, we're like, what? I'm like, yeah. And then I was also, and I don't judge me, but I don't have any older brothers and I don't have people in my family who went to college. I didn't know what I was doing. So I joined a fraternity, which actually turned out to be a little beneficial because people were like, oh, you could like study. I really wanted to go into that. Like, you got to be kidding me. And so stumbled onto it that way. That's pretty much, this will be the theme of my life. It's like stumbling into stuff like that. Like, okay, switched my major at that aforementioned Rams game. Noticed that they had an NFL publishing office in Los Angeles. I knew somebody whose brother-in-law worked there and like, oh, you should send in your resume. And at this time I was I was covering high school sports for the LA Times. And I went in and did an interview with a guy who was the former sports editor and former beat writer of the LA Rams for the LA Times, a guy by the name of Chuck Garrity Sr. And I sat there for 20 minutes. He was like, hey, Craig Stanky, and who's this guy? And do you know him? And you know Lon? And he's like, yeah, I know him. He's like, and we went through this thing of like, who did you know type of thing. And he's like, okay, cool. So I'm like, oh, is that it? And he's like, yeah, I'll give you a couple of interviews. So give me some clips and all that. And then I got hired. And then I did an internship there, which was really cool. Like, it's a pretty big deal. Look, you made the move across the country to come work for the NFL. You know what, like a special thing it is, because it's, hey, this is kind of a holy grail. And you're like, holy shit. Like, I really got. So I did internships similarly, like to what you did, like 7 months, be off 5. And at first, when you're in college, it's cool. You're like, fuck, I don't want to work this whole time. Like, I don't want to work year round. And then after a while, you're like, oh shit, like I really need, I need a job and I need money. And so I was still like waiting tables, and I was working as a food runner for the Improv because I still wanted to do comedy and stuff too. So I was doing like all kinds of things. And then eventually I'm like, one time on my internship, I just stopped. Normally it was like, because the way the publishing calendar went, usually your time ended in September, which is weird because like right when the season started, you would be done. And because like most kids would be going back to school or whatever. So one time I just decided, like, I'm just going to keep showing up and see what happens. And so I just kept showing up. And at some point, the Mr. Garrity, I'm like, I had an office. For fuck's sake, I had an office. And that's the way the NFL Publishing Group rolled. He walked in. He goes, oh, yeah, by the way, we're going to bring you on full time. And he handed me a yellow Post-it note. It's like, yeah, here it is. This is what you'll be making. And, yeah. And he walked away. That was it. Like, there's no ceremony. There's no email. There's no IM or anything. I was like, oh, I'm hired. So that's what it is. It was a very George Costanza-esque. I just will try not to leave and see what happens. And it worked out. And I've been in the NFL for a while now.
That is really funny. And even that is like an unusual story. And I didn't know that was how that happened. But even so, there are some kind of important points there for people to take away. One, like the who you know stuff, that is incredibly important. And, you know, even in my story, like how Gelhard was the one that knew who I was and picked out my resume amongst a bunch of other, you know, jackals or whatever. And that's how I ended up getting that job. So, you know, and you still I still had to like make it through an interview process and all that, but nevertheless, like who you know is incredibly important. So like it never hurts to, you know, make some relationships. I'm not a big networking person. I don't know about you, like, but that whole interaction always feels so phony to me, but just like, yeah, knowing people's important. So I
feel like now, did he pick because he knew your writing, and that's how when your resume came in, he was like, oh yeah, I know this guy from being out, and he probably followed you on Twitter and stuff like that too.
We followed each other on Twitter for a good while. And like, we had never like gone back and forth or like, you know, we weren't friends or anything, but we just followed each other. So, and, you know, he knew my name. It was like, oh yeah, I know him. And like, you know, I know he does reception perception and he's got a good looking dog. So, you know, we'll interview him. So, I mean, yeah, the who you know stuff is important.
Oh yeah, fill your Instagram with cute dog pics.
Well, that is, I mean, key. It's key. I say that all the time. Just
I'm not trying to be funny. I think that like people, like especially now, like I can't imagine the young people, the young people. But like, you know, if you're somebody who's interested in something like this, who really wants to pursue a career in it, like I would probably do less photos of you doing shots of Fireball and shit like that, and more like dog pics would be like. What you should really do is go look online and find all the articles about like what women want when they're looking for guys, like when they go, like, because they say that like with like if you're on match.com or something like that, like, oh, have photos of like cool photos of you with like friends or with your family and with dogs and things like that, because it gives out an impression of somebody who's serious and got their stuff together. So I feel like that's what your online profile should be. And it's like, don't feel like you need to get into like social topics or anything like that. Like you don't, like I know there was one person who was applying for something but was like railing against Title IX. And it's like, dude, like you're never getting hired because that is such a terrible, like first of all, you're just wrong. Right. And second of all, it's like, no, you cannot have like it just, you're never going to be able to fully, just stay away from that stuff. You can be funny, you can be snarky and stuff like that, but don't try to be outwardly mean, and have a cute dog. It really helps.
Certainly. And I mean, the dog thing especially, I do joke about like Charlie, you know, I'm like, there's 21,000 people following me on Twitter, and like probably a couple thousand of them are there for me, but the other 18,000 are definitely there for Charlie. You know, I joke about that, and that's probably true, but nevertheless, like having something like to distinguish yourself, even if it's, because we talk a lot on the show about having a unique piece of content, how that helps, like how reception perception's a big thing that, you know, makes me stand out and all that sort of stuff. And other people have similar series and everything to their name as well. But even just having something that's not about football, you know, or not about sports, like, and a dog is a good way to like, and it helps to just be a human, be a person. And I think it is really important also what you were saying about, you know, not having an opinion on every social issue. Like, I mean, I definitely don't hold a lot back. Like if I think something, I'm going to say it on Twitter, but for the most part, I don't have any like outrageously offensive opinions, but like, you know, we talked about this in the Josh Norris episode. Like sometimes it's okay to not have an opinion on something. Like you don't have to have a take on everything. I promise you.
There was. No, it's true. Like even this morning, like ESPN, there was a controversy with one of their hosts with a T-shirt he was wearing, and I saw a lot of people weighing in. And I'm like, you know what? Like this is not like no, like that's stay away. Like it.
Yeah.
There's a lot of times that you're better off just saying, you know what, I'm going to sit this one out, and then just really, you know what, when a Star Wars trailer comes out, then go all in there. Like then you feel a little bit safer. I know it's like a little disingenuous. Like I have opinions about a lot of things, and if you've ever seen me do stand-up comedy, I will take very pointed opinions about a lot of things, but it's like I'm not putting that out there on social media. And even today, I joked about it because I have a public Facebook profile page, Adam Ray Comedy, which I usually I use it for fantasy football in addition to like comedy stuff. And today I did a thing like a little disingenuous, like, hey, you know what? I know you should never be political. And you know what, though? This has gone on too far. Like I can't stay on the sidelines anymore. I got to tell you something. I got to dish out some hard truths. And you know what? And a lot of people might not like this, and I might lose a lot of followers, and I don't care because this needs to be said. And I spaced it out enough so you'd have to click in to see what I was going to say. And what it was basically this, is that if you don't like the trailer for Rogue One, that you and I cannot be friends. And I just said that was my statement. And a lot of people, that's fun. You know, it's like you can be lighthearted and goofy like that. Because I know people, I see people who, and especially now with the presidential election coming up, that a lot of people just don't want to hold their tongue. And I'm going to tell you what, you're never going to win. It's not a great idea. You're not going to win. And I know people, and I hate the people I hate the most. Is again, I don't want to get in trouble for saying this, but like the people who are supporting Donald Trump but not supporting him. And it's the people like who are like, look, if you want to be all in on Trump, go all in on Trump. Don't be the person who's hiding behind like, well, I just hate politicians. And so I just like somebody out there makes like, you know what? That's worse. Somehow you're worse. Like you're the worst of the, like if there's people who are pro, anti, the wishy-washy, like, hey, look, like at least take it. Like if you're going to be that person, like at least go down with the ship. At least have your opinion, even though it might be wrong, but you go with it.
The worst people to me, we're not gonna stay on this topic long, but the worst people to me are the ones that say Trump is just he's just saying what we're all thinking. He's just actually the one saying. I'm like, what the hell are you thinking? No, he's really not. Actually, he's not. He's saying that offensive shit that at Thanksgiving that your great uncle might say after a few glasses of wine, but he's not saying what we're all thinking. Or
no, I
don't know. But anyways, no, I agree with you, and. Yeah, like I said, I tend to share a lot about my personal life on Twitter and, you know, some of the things I believe, like gay rights are a big deal for me. And so that's something I'll talk publicly about on Twitter. And I don't really care if you give me pushback on that. Like women's rights is another thing. I don't care about sharing that. But there are certain things that I think or I believe that I think are probably just best left on the sidelines. You know, like I'll talk to my friends about those things, you know, like,
right.
Yeah, there's just a time and a place. And I think that is something that gets lost on people starting in the industry. Because not to mention, like, I know we've said this before, but you know, Twitter never forgets, man. Like, and if it's a bad football take or a bad fantasy take, believe me, you'll get shit for that, and you'll get just as much for like having a controversial social take that people are going to remember. So if you have those sort of things, maybe keep them in your pocket.
Yes. And actually, if you have to quantify anything with like, hey, I don't mean to seem homophobic, like, yeah, right. You already do. You already do.
It's the people that drive me nuts are the ones that say, I wouldn't say it, but and I'm like, you just said it though.
You just said it.
Yeah, those people drive me nuts. Yeah, so if you have to, yeah, that's a good point. If you have to like qualify your statement at the beginning of it, it's probably a tweet you shouldn't send. Just leave that one in the drafts.
I wish you could make an app that your Twitter would shut down if you had to start a phrase with like, I don't mean to sound racist. Like your phone would just blow up.
Yeah, just the app just closes down.
How did that happen?
Your battery life immediately goes to zero. No, that's a good. I'll work on that and get that as an app development. Make some money off that. Let's steal your idea. Thank you. But Rank, before we get a little farther into your NFL.com NFL fantasy story, you talked about comedy. Talk a little bit about like your comedy background and what that like, and I know you still do some stand up. How does that like helped you in this field become more of a, like, how has it helped your football analyst persona to have that comedy background?
Well, I think you see a lot of people who are going into acting or anything like that. And when you're going to go on TV, you have to learn presentation and things like that. Or even if you're going on radio shows and doing podcasts and things of that nature, you want to have the ability to like have a commanding presence, whether it's on a stage, whether it's on a mic or whatever it is. And I didn't go into comedy just to be like, oh, I want to further my football career. I legitimately grew up loving comedy. I remember on Friday nights, there was a show called A&E's Evening at the Improv. There was a Caroline, there was a Laugh. There was like all these comedy shows, Comic Strip Live, and all these cool things. And my dad was an early riser, so he was always in bed. And my mom and I were nocturnal, so we'd always be up watching either something stupid like Planet of the Apes or watching all these comedians. And I remember when guys like Drew Carey was like a relatively unknown guy, or even Sarah Silverman was like an unknown comic, and really being into that and really wanting to give that a go. And that was one of the things when I was in college, because early on, before I switched to journalism and all that, I'm like, I don't think I'm going to make it. And I'm just going to college because my parents it's really important to them. And I really feel like I should be doing it. But I just want to go do, like, if nothing else, I want to go out and do comedy. And we're starting to get into that racket and everything, and doing the open mics and trying to, and obviously working at improv and get that way. And it was really always just something that I really enjoyed doing. And like this, and it's really, I know a lot of people are like, oh, it's so ballsy to go out and do something like that. But I'm like, I really never felt that way. I always felt like it sucks to go out there and eat shit and like nobody laugh. And you're like, all right, like this isn't working out so well, but it's still a fun process. And so I was really into it. And it did end up in, because the NFL publishing group I was working for, we stopped being a thing in 2003. And I was obviously still working there, and they laid us off. So we went on contract, or we went freelance. I was still like ghost writing for Chris Collinsworth for his NFL.com column. And I was still writing some other things here and there. So I'm just kind of like bouncing around. And, but it afforded me an opportunity to go out and do some comedy and kind of get a little act going, and it's having a lot of fun with it. It's a tough racket, but it was a lot of fun. And then in 2007, I started working here again full time. So, I didn't lose because the time gap wasn't too great. I didn't lose my pension or my benefits. So that was cool.
There you go. That's key.
That was the key. That is the key. And so I remember fighting our HR department on that, because like I knew the law, and she didn't. She's like, nope, you don't get that back. I'm like, oh no. The CLA says as long as it's within 5 years, all that stuff is vested. So go learn your legal briefs. But I think I had a point. Oh, no, yeah. So I was doing that. So I was still doing comedy, and I was working here, humping the desk, turning and like NFL.com. Like I wish you could see it in 2007, 2008, 2000. It was miserable. It was just AP stories that we would turn around, slap a couple of includes in. And that was it. That was our business. And so I told one of our bosses, I said, listen, this isn't really working out for me. I know I lied and said that I wanted to be an editor, but I didn't. I want to write. And I need to write. If not, like, it's cool, we'll both like go our separate ways. And this guy goes, well, we only have one person doing fantasy football right now. If you'd be willing to edit his stuff, we'll allow you to go out there and write it. And I'm like, all right. Like, that's kind of cool. So, all right. So I was doing that. And then they started doing these videos, these on-demand videos, and they decided that they needed another person to do it. And they go, hey, Rank, like, don't you do stand-up comedy? And I'm like, yeah. They're like, hey, would you mind, like, sitting in and being, like, the second person on these videos? And I'm like, all right. And I was kind of, huskier and, whatever. But I just went out there, and I wasn't very good at first. I don't know that I'm good now, but whatever. But I went out there and just was doing it, and it just kind of, it all came to, again, like, it's just one of those things, like, why I don't know. It's inexplicable while I'm sitting here talking to you, like how I was able to, like, I'm not necessarily talented. I knew guys in college who I went to school with who were much better on camera than I ever was. And guys, even guys like you who are very smart in fantasy football, who should have a bigger presence. Like they should be reading me. They should be reading you, not reading me. And so it's just, again, one of those inexplicable things. But, since I'm here, I'm enjoying it. But I don't know. I don't know if that'll make people angry or not. I don't know. But it is weird. It's just, again, the Costanza-ism of like, yeah, all of a sudden I'm sitting here. I don't know how it happened, but here it is.
Well, but I think there's definitely some value in just being there, and also because that seems to be when people talk to me about getting started. That seems to be the hardest thing for people to do, is just to actually put themselves in the position to get noticed or be started, to just get started and just start doing it. And I think so there's some value in your story there for sure, about just being there and just always willing to kind of like, hey, I'll take this on, or like also having the experience of comedy and being able to have people know you for that definitely helped you get noticed and be like, yeah, you can be on TV, or, we'll throw you in this video thing because you got experience doing that. So that's something important for people to take away. But no,
I really do like to tell kids that, is like when a lot of people ask, like, how do you do it? Like, honestly, just don't go away. Like, don't go like, and it's the same thing for like comedy and acting and anything like that, or any industry that you really want to be into, anything that you're really passionate about. If you're willing to just sit there and be like, listen, I'm not going away, eventually you'll wear people down and they'll acquiesce to you. But that's, again, it's like a lot of it, like it seems so cliche to be like, oh, it's who you know, and it's about showing up. It's like, it really is. Like, there's really like, I knew 10 people in college who were probably more talented than me, but like people, life takes you in different directions. And, some guys are going out and kicking ass in other fields and going and, making millions of dollars selling real estate or doing whatever they're doing. And it's like, I just decided at some point that this is what I wanted to pursue. And that even though there were some lean years and there was times I remember like one year I was making like 17 grand a year. I was just like, well, I'm just going to do it. I signed up for it. I even did internships in baseball. I know this would be foreign to you, but I did an internship with the Dodgers, which was basically for free. It was just like, man, just keep doing all that stuff, because all that experience, hopefully and eventually it will pay off.
Certainly. And speaking of paying off, have you ever wished you could be an NFL general manager? Well, now you can, thanks to Reality Sports Online, a powerful fantasy sports platform where owners get to build and manage their fantasy team like an NFL general manager. Reality Sports Online was designed by former NFL front office personnel and features a revolutionary free agency auction room which mimics actual NFL free agency, enabling fantasy owners to compete against each other to negotiate with and sign the NFL's top talent or single or multi-year contracts. The platform can host up to 32 teams and has tons of other cool features in addition to free agency, like rookie drafts, multiple team trades, franchise tags, injured reserves, automated contracts, salary cap functionality, and much, much more. Test your general manager skills by visiting realitysportsonline.com and participating in a free mock free agency auction today. If you like what you see, and I know you will because I play on their platform, use the promo code BYB10 to receive a 10% discount on your league or team today. Fantasy just got real at realitysportsonline.com. Rank, I know you've never seen any read like that there on the Fantasy Live podcast.
Not only that, but your segue was fucking perfect. Like, it was just so seamless. Speaking of paying off, and I'm like, oh yeah, I'm like, oh my God, this son of a bitch. Like, it's not enough that your podcast is sponsored, but you got to be such a pro about it.
Well, this is the third episode I've had now that's sponsored. So this was we're getting there. We're getting good at this. We're getting a little bit better each bit by bit. But
solid read. Who was your guy last week? Liz was on at some point. Who was your person last week?
Liz was episode 10, then I had Mark Schofield on episode 11, and then last was Adam Pfeiffer. He's kind of like,
that's right.
Yeah, he's freelancing around a couple places. He's a younger guy than me, so he kind of represented that like in progress sort of thing. And I just realized now both you guys are Adam and Adam on the same week. Didn't even notice. It's because to me I just call you Rank. But speaking of which, Rank,
he's way better. Go back and listen to his. cut out on this one. I'd pull the cord and just go back and listen to Adam Pfeiffer again.
Please don't endorse that they stop listening to the podcast.
I know, let this one play out, like unplug it or whatever. Turn the volume down, go play some Tetris.
Yeah, mute it, throw it in the other room, do what you got to do, but definitely just give us that download number credit. But Rank, kind of closing out your story here. Actually, you mentioned being huskier at the time, and that's kind of something I want to ask you about, like, because I don't know if you know this or if you've ever seen me talk about it on Twitter, but it's something I actually want to write about too in the next couple of months. I used to be 315 pounds. Like, I used to be a big dude myself, and I kind of want to get your story a little bit on that as well.
Yeah, they really did shame me. You mean
like the NFL media or?
Yeah, I don't want to name names, but yeah, like people kind of suggested, like, hey, if you really want to make a go of this, perhaps you'll make some lifestyle changes. And I didn't know that you're 315. Jesus.
Yeah. At my heaviest, I was 315.
Oh my gosh. That's
I'm
crazy.
224
oh my God.
right. I'm 224 right now.
By the way, I'm at 5% battery life. This eats through your phone like nobody's business.
Yeah. Oh, don't worry. We're winding down here. We'll get you out before.
So if I go out, that's it. But I'll come back. No, I'm just kidding. I wouldn't do that to you people again. You've been so kind to listen this long. That's very sweet of you. But you know what it was? I will tell you, like that again, like sometimes these things can be broken down into the most simplest terms, and whether it's for your job of being the person who shows up and never goes away and just knows a couple of people. And similarly, when it comes to weight loss, it was really a matter of eating less, drinking less, and working out more. And it was just something that at some point in my life where I was at my heaviest, I think I had gotten up to, I don't know if I ever got quite up to 260, but I was in the 250s easily. And I just took a look at what I was doing. I was drinking, I don't think I was drinking a ton, but like on the weekends, I would throw them down and I was drinking soda. And I know you hate soda, and I'm with you. Soda is one thing you got. Like, I still drink it periodically, but I'm more into coffee and stuff like that. But I don't try not to drink your calories. Watch what you eat. Don't go back for seconds. If you're going to Panda Express, you know what? I understand, like, you're in a bind or whatever. Or it could be any place, but you don't have to order the whole goddamn menu. You know what? You could legally, like, listen. You could walk into Panda Express and say, you know what? I'll take a one-item bowl. I'll have the string bean chicken with vegetables. They'll fucking allow it. You don't have to go two-item with the extra egg rolls. You can literally say, like, I'm not gonna eat as much. And I don't know what you did. I'm interested to hear how you did it, but that really was like the biggest thing. And I got the MyFitnessPal, tracked my calories, and all of a sudden, and I did it too. It took me a year to lose like 50 pounds because I was losing like a pound a week, and I really wanted to have that slow burn, so I knew it would stay off. Because obviously it stayed off for you. What was your secret?
Yeah, well, you look damn good now, so it definitely worked for you, and that's the best. Yeah, for me, at first, like, getting from 315, where I was like my junior year of college, I was my heaviest. I was at 315. I dropped down to like 280 by the time I graduated college. That was really like just making the slightest of changes, like not drinking 18 beers, every weekend night, or like binge drinking 4 nights a week. That's not doing that. Even my senior year, I was like drinking wine a lot more. And like, of course, all my friends in college were assholes about that, which was like, you guys just aren't cultured. And that's probably where I started that part of my persona, and was just, instead of eating like a bunch of red meat, would eat some more, grilled chicken. That was like basic stuff. But then dropping down from like 280 to 230, that like the big period of weight loss, that was just like, that was going to the gym 6 days a week, and being there for like at least an hour. And now I cut out like carbs and sugar completely from my diet for like 3 months, like no bread, So, and really the only time I get a bunch of carbs in is with beer and sugar with coffee creamer. And then that's about it. So I'm still doing that. And right now I'm down to like 224. And I mean, it was just,
but you look great. Like, I don't want to be weird, but like you look pretty good. And it's like,
and I look
honestly,
even better. No, you can always compliment my physical appearance. And I'm going to tell you this, I look even better than the last time you saw me.
Very nice. You know what? I'll tell you too, going black. I used to put like a ton of creamers in my coffee, black coffee, just going black coffee because Psycho Mike, who was on Loveline, I think he quit recently. Like I see him at my little boutique gym. He was on the radio one time talking about like, go black coffee. He's like, I only drink water and black coffee. And I'm like, I'll give that a shot. And so that was a huge thing.
I know. I really probably I just find the taste of it gross right now. And like, Galhar makes fun of me for it all the time, like how much coffee creamer I use. And I know it would be great if I just cut that out. I just probably
wean yourself.
Yeah, I probably should do that. That's something I should work on the next couple months. But yeah, and right now I'm on a really strict diet, and like I'm trying to get down to like closer to 200 by the time I come back start working every day at NFL again in July or whatever, but we'll see how it goes. I'm trying to look like Michael B. Jordan from Creed. That's the goal right now.
Yeah, bud. That's a good idea.
No, but to be honest with you, I just was tired of like putting it off, and it was just the timing was perfect, and where I was in my life, and it was just like I'm just going to do this, and it's something I'm going to actually write about this. Once the draft is over, I'm going to write something about it and put it on my website, so you all can look forward to reading that. But always look forward to talking to Adam Rank, one of the greatest people that I get to work with. Rank, I always give. Well, I'm not going to stop it. It's not like your competition's that great. Let's be honest. No, I'm just kidding. But before we get out of here, I always give the guest one last opportunity to say whatever is on their mind, on their, whatever they want to say. The floor is yours before I yank it back out from under you in a few minutes.
Oh, that's very nice of you. I'm at 2% too, so I'm glad that you're giving me this opportunity. You know what I want to do? I want to spend some time right now putting over Matt Harmon. I really I don't know. Listen, I know I probably sound like an asshole, and like people, if you listen this long, like seriously, you're a great human being. But in all honesty, the Mike Trout start and all that stuff notwithstanding, one of the cool things in this business and getting to a point where I'm not like I'm a superstar or anything like I don't think like that, but I'm old and I'm getting on at some point. I'm going to be replaced by somebody. But I just want to say that, like, when I see somebody like you and somebody who comes in who's young and enthusiastic, it really makes me feel good about how the business is going and the people who are going to be carrying on this tradition for years into the future. And I really did enjoy everything. And I still do. I enjoy everything that you do. I think you have the right persona. I love your voice, and I love everything that you're doing. And I think that it is only a small matter of time before you are probably, if not the biggest, you'll be one of the biggest stars in this industry. I love the way you're bringing in actual film watching with actual statistical analysis and all that kind of stuff. And I think you're really taking a medium that needed to be, taken forward a little bit more and really doing a great job with that stuff. So I appreciate everything you do. I think you've been a huge benefit to the NFL Media Group, and I appreciate everything that you're bringing to the product. And I think the future looks great, and it's cool. It's kind of cool to look back. And I know some people would look at it as competition, but I look at it as like we're all in this together, and people like you are really taking this forward, and everybody who's a part of it. So thank you for doing it. Thank you for being you, and thank you for having me on. This was really an honor. Honestly, this was a big thrill for me. I know I come off like an asshole to a lot of people, so I was touched that you would even give me more than 5 minutes to sit here and ramble on about nonsense and do all that stuff. And it's a lot of fun, and I really can't wait for you to come back. And we're going to have a kick-ass year this year, I think. Yeah, well, that was way too nice, and I really appreciate you saying all that. And I feel very much the same way about you. Like that rocky start we had was only we're just getting that shit out of the way before we became basically best friends. And yes. no, I love Rank. He was one of the more helpful people to me. So that's why I definitely wanted to have you on. And I knew you'd tell some damn good stories. And I definitely think you have. And what you mentioned there about like, it's not competition, like I say this a lot on the show, like we're all in this together. And the people that, Matthew Berry said it on the show, like if you have that mindset that it's always competition and you're always looking over your shoulder, that comes from a very insecure place. And it says a lot about you, and it will eventually
it will eventually be your downfall in some way. Like, we're all in this together. There's more than enough space for all of us. And, there's more than enough space for all you listeners in here. And I really appreciate how many of you guys have tuned in. It's actually pretty astounding that you guys listen to this show and listen to me ramble on and but I do bring on some great guests. And that probably is worth it. But so thank you all so much. So thank you all so much. I really appreciate it. If you like the show, please make sure to rate and review the podcast. And I thank you all so much for listening today, and I hope you learned something.